Maplewood was the kind of town where life felt safe, predictable, perfect even. Picket fences framed lush green lawns, the scent of freshly baked pies drifted through the air, and children's laughter echoed like a melody through the streets. But beneath the tranquility of this suburban paradise was a story of bravery, loyalty, and a bond so unbreakable it would soon defy all odds. At the center of it all was Tommy Andrews, a 10-year-old spark of energy and wonder. With his wild brown hair, mischievous grin, and a spirit that refused to sit still, Tommy was adored by everyone who knew him. Yet his closest companion wasn't a kid from school or the neighborhood. It was Buddy, a shaggy, lovable Old English sheepdog. Buddy wasn't technically Tommy's dog. He belonged to the Wilsons, an elderly couple next door. But the moment Tommy's family moved into the neighborhood 5 years ago, Mrs. Wilson had declared it fate. "That boy needs a friend," she had said softly. "And Buddy? He needs a reason to believe he's still young." From then on, Buddy became more than just a dog. He was Tommy's shadow, his confidant, his partner in every adventure. Together, they were inseparable. Whether chasing squirrels, rolling in the grass, or sitting under the oak tree as Tommy read aloud from his favorite comics, their bond was undeniable. What no one realized, though, was just how deep their connection ran, or how it would soon be tested in ways no one in Maplewood could have imagined. It was a balmy Saturday in late August, the kind of day where time felt lazy and endless. The sun hung high, cicadas buzzed in the trees, and the air carried the sweet aroma of ripening apples from Mr. Peter's orchard down the street. Tommy had spent the morning in a water fight with his dad while washing the car, laughter echoing as suds flew everywhere. By lunchtime, Tommy was restless. "Can I go to the Wilsons to play with Buddy?" he asked, bouncing on his toes, as his mom, Sarah, set sandwiches on the table. Sarah hesitated. "The Wilsons are visiting their daughter this weekend, remember? They won't be back until tomorrow night." Tommy's face fell briefly, but he brightened again. "But Buddy's still there, right? Mrs. Wilson said I could play with him even when they're gone. Please, Mom?" Sarah exchanged a look with her husband, Michael, who shrugged and smiled. "All right," she said with a sigh. "But be back by 4. We're having dinner with Grandma tonight." Tommy whooped in delight, grabbed his sandwich, and dashed out the door. As he rounded the corner to the Wilsons' backyard, he let out a sharp whistle. Instantly, Buddy's shaggy face popped up at the fence, his tail wagging furiously. "Hey, boy!" Tommy laughed as he unlatched the gate and was bowled over by 80 pounds of pure dog enthusiasm. The hours flew by as the duo played tug-of-war with an old rope, raced around the yard, and flopped beneath the shade of the towering oak tree. Tommy chatted animatedly about a book he'd just finished, a thrilling adventure about a boy and his dog saving their town. He was so engrossed in his story that he didn't notice the beat-up van pulling up across the street. Nor did he see the two men who got out, their eyes fixed on him and Buddy. It wasn't until a shadow fell across him that Tommy finally looked up, startled. Two strangers loomed over him, the sun behind them masking their faces. "Hey, kid," one said, his voice rough. "We're looking for a lost puppy. Think you could help us out?" Tommy hesitated, unease prickling at the back of his neck. His parents had warned him about strangers, but these men didn't seem threatening. One was tall and lanky, with a baseball cap pulled low over his eyes. The other was shorter, stockier, with a neatly trimmed beard. Buddy, however, wasn't fooled. His hackles rose and a low growl rumbled in his chest. "I haven't seen any lost puppies," Tommy said cautiously, standing up. The shorter man stepped closer, ignoring Buddy's growls. "Come on, kid. It'll only take a minute. We've got pictures in our van. Maybe you've seen it around." Tommy's instincts screamed at him to run, but fear kept him rooted. Before he could react, the man lunged, grabbing his arm. Buddy leapt, his teeth sinking into the man's leg. There was a shout, a flash of metal, and Buddy yelped, stumbling back. Tommy screamed as a cloth was pressed over his face, the world spinning until everything went black. When Sarah glanced at the clock and realized it was nearly 5, her heart skipped a beat. Tommy was never late, not without calling or sending a message. She tried his phone, but it went straight to voicemail. "Michael," she called out, trying to keep the worry from her voice. "Tommy's not back yet. I'm going to check the Wilsons. Michael frowned but nodded, sensing her unease. Sarah hurried next door, her worry growing with every step. The gate to the Wilsons' backyard was open, swinging slightly in the breeze. As she rounded the corner, the sight that met her froze her in place. Buddy was lying on his side, his thick fur matted with blood. His soft whimpering barely masked the silence that hung heavy in the air. But Tommy was nowhere to be seen. Sarah's scream shattered the stillness, bringing neighbors running from every direction. What followed was a blur of chaos, flashing police lights, search parties combing the streets, and Sarah and Michael clinging to each other, desperation etched into their faces. The police worked quickly, questioning everyone, piecing together the few details they had. The open gate, the beat-up van someone vaguely recalled seeing down the street, and the wounded dog all pointed to something dark. But there was no sign of Tommy, and with every passing hour, hope began to waver. Buddy was rushed to the nearest emergency vet. His condition was critical, a deep stab wound to his side and significant blood loss. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a seasoned veterinarian, assessed him with grim determination. "This is bad," she murmured to her assistant as they prepped Buddy for surgery. But something about the dog gave her pause. His eyes, despite the pain and the anesthesia dulling his senses, remained fixed on the door. He whined softly, not in pain but with a desperate urgency. "It's like he's waiting for someone," Elena said, her voice filled with awe. The surgery was touch and go. Buddy had lost a dangerous amount of blood, and closing the wound was a delicate process. But he was a fighter, and as they finished stitching him up, a commotion erupted from the recovery room. Buddy, groggy and weak, was struggling to his feet, pulling against the IV lines attached to him. His movements were frantic, his eyes wild with determination. "Whoa there, big guy," Elena said soothingly as she rushed to calm him. But Buddy wouldn't be calmed. It took 3 staff members to keep him from jumping off the table. "This isn't normal," Elena said, shaking her head in disbelief. "It's like he knows something we don't." The police officer assigned to Tommy's case, Jack Thompson, had arrived at the clinic to check on the dog. A seasoned K9 handler, Jack knew the look in Buddy's eyes all too well. "He's on a mission," Jack said quietly. "I've seen this with police dogs before. He knows something." Elena hesitated. "He just came out of surgery. He shouldn't even be conscious, let alone trying to move." Jack studied Buddy for a moment before speaking. "Doc, I know this sounds crazy, but we need to let him lead us. This dog might be our best chance of finding Tommy." Elena's instincts warred with logic. Everything she'd been trained to do said Buddy needed rest. But as she looked at the determined dog, she felt something else. Hope. "All right," she said finally. "But I'm coming with you. He's going to need medical attention, and I'm not letting him out of my sight." In the early hours of Sunday morning, an unlikely search party was assembled. Jack drove his patrol car, Elena followed in her van, and Buddy, bandaged but resolute, took the lead. At first, Buddy seemed disoriented, circling and whining. But as they reached the outskirts of town, his demeanor changed. His nose to the ground, Buddy began to run, his steps growing more purposeful with every stride. They passed shuttered factories, empty lots, and graffiti-covered warehouses. Jack's heart raced, torn between cautious optimism and the fear of what they might find. Elena gripped the steering wheel tightly, praying silently that this wasn't a dead end. Finally, after nearly an hour, Buddy came to a sudden halt outside a dilapidated warehouse. His hackles rose and a low growl rumbled from his throat. "This has to be it," Jack said, calling for backup as he carefully approached the building. Elena stayed back with Buddy, marveling at his determination. She knelt beside him, gently stroking his fur. "You're incredible," she whispered. Moments later, the sound of splintering wood and muffled shouts echoed from inside. Then came the words they'd all been waiting for. "We've got him! The boy's alive!" Tommy's world was a haze of fear and confusion. His head pounded, and his mouth felt dry as cotton. When he finally stirred awake, he found himself in a small, dimly lit room. The walls were bare, the only window was high and barred, and a thin mattress on the floor served as his prison. Panic welled in Tommy's chest as the memories came flooding back. The strangers, Buddy's growls, the sharp pain in his arm, and the sickly sweet smell of the cloth. "Hey," he yelled, his voice cracking. "Let me out. Please. I just want to go home." The door creaked open, and the two men entered. Under the harsh fluorescent light, Tommy could see them clearly for the first time. The taller one had a rat-like face and shifty eyes, while the shorter one had a scar that ran from his ear to his chin. "Pipe down, kid," the shorter one growled. Tommy sat frozen, trying to mask the fear in his voice. "What do you want? My parents don't have much money." The taller man let out a high, unpleasant laugh. "This ain't about money, boy. You're worth more than that to the right people." Tommy's heart sank. Whatever they wanted, it wasn't good. Alone and terrified, he huddled on the mattress, tears stinging his eyes. His thoughts drifted to Buddy. Was his friend okay? Had the knife hurt him badly? What Tommy didn't know was that Buddy was already on his way. As the night stretched on, Buddy led Officer Jack Thompson and Dr. Elena Rodriguez through the outskirts of town. At first, his path seemed uncertain. He whined and circled, pausing to sniff the ground before suddenly darting forward again. It was as if he was piecing together invisible clues, following a trail only he could sense. Jack, an experienced K-9 handler, recognized the behavior. "He's picking up a scent," he said, his voice steady. "We need to trust him." Elena kept a close eye on Buddy. She could see the strain in his every step, the way he fought against the pain and exhaustion from his surgery. "Come on, Buddy," she whispered, her voice tinged with both awe and concern. "You can do this." After nearly an hour, Buddy stopped abruptly in front of a dilapidated warehouse. His hackles rose and a low growl rumbled from deep within his chest. "This is it," Jack said, calling for backup. The tension was palpable as more patrol cars arrived, their flashing lights illuminating the crumbling structure. Officers moved into position, guns drawn, while Jack approached the door cautiously. Inside, Tommy jolted awake at the sound of voices and heavy footsteps. He could hear shouts and the splintering of wood. "Stay quiet," the scar-faced man barked, grabbing Tommy roughly by the arm. But before they could move, the door burst open and police officers flooded the room. The kidnappers barely had time to react before they were tackled to the ground and handcuffed. "Clear!" one officer shouted. Tommy sat frozen for a moment before a paramedic knelt beside him, gently asking if he was okay. Tears streamed down his face as relief washed over him. "I want my mom and dad," he whispered. As Tommy was led outside, his eyes scanned the crowd anxiously. And then he saw him. "Buddy!" Tommy screamed, breaking into a run. The dog, bandaged and weak, was waiting at the edge of the crowd, his tail wagging furiously. Tommy dropped to his knees, wrapping his arms around Buddy's thick fur. "You came for me," he sobbed, burying his face in Buddy's coat. "I knew you would." The reunion was nothing short of magical. Onlookers, including officers and neighbors who had gathered after hearing the news, watched with tears in their eyes. Back at the scene, the two kidnappers were loaded into police cars, their plan thwarted and their criminal operation exposed. The warehouse, it turned out, was part of a larger child trafficking ring, and the evidence found inside would lead to the rescue of several other missing children. As Tommy was reunited with his parents, the emotions spilled over. Sarah and Michael couldn't stop hugging him, their tears flowing freely. "We thought we'd lost you," Sarah whispered, her voice trembling. "Thank God for Buddy." Tommy nodded, his arms still tightly around his loyal companion. "He saved me, Mom. He didn't give up." By the time the adrenaline began to fade, Buddy was showing signs of exhaustion. Elena quickly stepped in, reminding everyone of the toll the night had taken on him. "He needs rest and care," she said firmly, guiding the dog into her van. The next morning, the Andrews family, the Wilsons, and Dr. Elena sat together in the vet clinic, watching over Buddy as he recovered. His breathing was slow but steady, and despite everything, his tail wagged faintly whenever Tommy was near. For the Andrews, gratitude didn't feel like enough. Buddy had gone above and beyond what anyone could have imagined. "You saved our boy," Michael said, kneeling beside Buddy and gently stroking his head. "We'll never be able to repay you." In the days that followed, the story of Buddy's heroic rescue spread like wildfire. News outlets picked it up, and soon people across the country were hearing about the brave Old English sheepdog who had defied the odds to save his best friend. But for Buddy, it wasn't about headlines or praise. It was about love, pure, unwavering love for the boy who meant the world to him. The morning sun rose over Maplewood, casting a golden glow across the quiet streets. For the Andrews family, it marked the end of a nightmare and the beginning of healing. Tommy was finally home, safe in the arms of his parents, while Buddy lay resting nearby, bandaged but alive. The reunion between Tommy and Buddy was the talk of the neighborhood. Kids who had grown up playing with the gentle sheepdog came by with handmade cards, treats, and wide-eyed stories of how Buddy was a real-life superhero. Even adults, some teary-eyed, stopped by to offer their gratitude. But for the Andrews family, the moment was deeply personal. Over and over, Tommy recounted what had happened. The men, the warehouse, and how he knew, deep in his heart, that Buddy would come for him. "You didn't just save me, Buddy," Tommy said one evening as he gently stroked the dog's fur. "You saved everyone who loves me too." Meanwhile, the kidnappers' capture unraveled a larger web of crime. Evidence found at the warehouse led to the rescue of several other missing children, each story sparking a wave of relief and justice. Tommy, though shaken, found strength in knowing his ordeal had helped stop something terrible. The Wilsons, who had rushed back to town upon hearing the news, declined the rewards pouring in for Buddy's heroism. "Buddy didn't do this for fame or fortune," Mrs. Wilson told reporters firmly. "He did it out of love." As days turned into weeks, the bond between the Andrews and Wilson families grew even stronger. Recognizing how much Tommy and Buddy meant to each other, they made an arrangement. Buddy would now split his time between the two homes. A special doggy door was even installed in the fence so Buddy could move freely between yards, just as he always had. Tommy's recovery wasn't without its struggles. Nightmares often woke him in the dead of night, memories of the warehouse and the kidnappers replaying in his mind. But each time, Buddy was there, nuzzling Tommy's hand, standing guard until he fell asleep again. As for Buddy, his scar became a badge of honor. To Tommy, it made him look even more heroic. "You're the bravest dog in the whole world," he'd often say, scratching behind Buddy's ears. The neighborhood also rallied in the wake of the kidnapping, determined to prevent anything like it from happening again. A new neighborhood watch program was established, safety measures were implemented, and the sense of community deepened. Still, the story of Buddy's rescue wasn't just about preventing danger. It was a testament to the depth of love and loyalty between a boy and his dog. It inspired people far beyond Maplewood, showing them that heroes come in all shapes and sizes, even with 4 legs and a wagging tail. For Tommy, the experience left a lasting impression. As he grew older, his fascination with law enforcement and animal rescue grew stronger. On his 16th birthday, he announced to his parents that he wanted to become a K-9 officer. "I want to help other kids," Tommy explained with a determined look. "The way Buddy helped me, and I want to work with dogs as brave and loyal as him." Sarah and Michael exchanged a knowing smile, recognizing the same determination they'd seen in Buddy that fateful night. "That's a noble goal," Michael said with pride, "and I can't think of anyone better suited for it." The years rolled by, and the Andrews family settled into a new sense of normal. Tommy grew taller, stronger, and more confident, but his bond with Buddy never wavered. Even as Buddy's muzzle turned gray and his steps grew slower, his devotion to Tommy remained steadfast. When Tommy turned 18, he achieved his dream of joining the police academy. On the day he left for training, Buddy was there, tail wagging despite the stiffness in his hips. Kneeling beside him, Tommy scratched behind his ears, just as he had countless times before. "I'll make you proud, boy," he whispered. "Everything I do, every life I help, it'll be because of you." Buddy woofed softly, as if he understood. As Tommy's car disappeared around the corner, Buddy sat by the driveway, watching long after it was out of sight. During Tommy's months at the academy, Buddy became a quieter presence in the Andrews and Wilson households. He spent hours lying by the window, perking up at every passing car, hoping it was Tommy coming home. Both families took turns comforting the loyal dog, but nothing could fully ease the longing in his eyes. Tommy, meanwhile, poured his heart into his training, excelling in every class, especially those involving K-9 units. His instructors noted his natural connection with the police dogs, a bond forged through years of lessons learned from Buddy. Whenever the challenges felt overwhelming, Tommy thought of that fateful night years ago. He remembered Buddy's determination, how he'd never given up, even when the odds seemed impossible. It became his guiding light, a constant reminder to push forward. On one of his rare visits home, Tommy found Buddy lying under their favorite oak tree in the Wilsons' yard. The old dog's movements were slow and deliberate now, but his eyes still shone with the same intelligence and love. "You know, Buddy," Tommy said sitting beside him, "every day at the academy I think about you. When things get tough, I remember how you never gave up on me. That's what keeps me going." Buddy responded by resting his head on Tommy's lap, a gesture that had comforted Tommy countless times before. As Tommy's graduation approached, excitement filled Maplewood. The entire neighborhood, which had rallied around the Andrews family during their darkest hour, planned to celebrate the milestone. But just a day before the ceremony, the unthinkable happened. During his morning walk with Mrs. Wilson, Buddy collapsed. She rushed him to Dr. Elena Rodriguez. But the diagnosis was grim. His heart was failing, and there was little that could be done. The news devastated Tommy, who had been looking forward to Buddy being there for his big day. He rushed home, his heart heavy with the thought of losing his oldest and dearest friend. When Tommy arrived, Buddy was lying on his bed in the Wilsons' living room, surrounded by both families. His tail thumped weakly against the cushion as Tommy entered, his eyes lighting up at the sight of his boy. Tommy knelt beside Buddy, tears streaming down his face as he gently hugged him. "Hey, old friend," he whispered. "I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." Through the night, Tommy stayed by Buddy's side, reminiscing about their adventures, the games they'd played, and the lives they'd touched together. As dawn broke, Buddy lifted his head one last time, licked Tommy's hand, and with a soft sigh closed his eyes. The graduation ceremony was bittersweet. Tommy accepted his badge with a heavy heart, but also with a renewed sense of purpose. In his speech to his fellow graduates, he paid tribute to Buddy. "We're here to protect and serve," Tommy said, his voice steady despite his grief. "But we're also here to embody the very best qualities of humanity: loyalty, bravery, compassion. My dog, Buddy, taught me what those words truly mean. He saved my life, not just from kidnappers, but every day by showing me what it means to love unconditionally. As we go out into the world, let's carry those lessons with us." There wasn't a dry eye in the room as Tommy concluded his speech. Among the audience were his parents, the Wilsons, and neighbors who had been part of his journey. They all stood and applauded, their hearts full of pride and love. In the years that followed, Tommy achieved his dream of becoming a K-9 officer. Partnered with a young German shepherd named Max, he became known as one of the most compassionate and effective officers in the department. Together, they specialized in finding missing children, bringing hope to families in their darkest hours. Off duty, Tommy devoted his time to giving back. He volunteered at local animal shelters, spoke at schools about responsible pet ownership, and started a program that paired rescue dogs with children who had experienced trauma. The initiative, inspired by his bond with Buddy, helped both kids and dogs heal, finding strength and purpose together. 5 years after Buddy's passing, the community of Maplewood came together to honor his legacy. They created a park in his name, complete with a dog run and a bronze statue of Buddy standing tall and proud. At the park's dedication ceremony, Tommy stood before the crowd, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "Buddy wasn't just a pet," he began. "He was a hero, a friend, and a teacher. He showed us that love knows no boundaries, not age, not species, not even life and death. His legacy lives on in every child who finds comfort in a furry friend, in every rescue dog given a second chance, and in every act of courage inspired by his story." Tommy paused, looking at the statue that captured Buddy's likeness so perfectly, the shaggy coat, the alert eyes, the stance that always seemed ready for action. "This park isn't just a memorial," he continued. "It's a promise to carry forward the spirit of love and loyalty that Buddy embodied. It's a place where new friendships will form, where children will laugh and play, and where we'll remember that sometimes our greatest heroes have 4 legs and a wagging tail." As he finished, a soft breeze rustled through the trees, carrying the sound of distant barking. For a moment, Tommy could almost imagine Buddy there beside him, his tail wagging, ready for their next adventure. Buddy's legacy, a testament to loyalty, bravery, and love, would inspire generations to come. And in the heart of Maplewood, a bronze statue of a heroic sheepdog would forever stand guard, a symbol of the extraordinary bond between humans and their animal companions. The story of Buddy and Tommy became a cherished legend in Maplewood, a tale passed down with pride from one generation to the next. The small park built in Buddy's honor became a centerpiece of the community, a place where families gathered, children played, and dogs roamed freely. For Tommy, Buddy was more than just a part of his past. He was a constant presence in his heart and actions. Every time he worked a case, especially one involving a missing child, he felt Buddy's influence. When he knelt beside a frightened boy or girl, he often thought of how Buddy had comforted him in his darkest hours. Buddy taught me what it means to never give up on someone you love, Tommy would say when asked about his success as a K-9 officer. And that's something I carry with me every day. The program Tommy started, pairing rescue dogs with children who had experienced trauma, flourished. It became a beacon of hope for families across the region, helping kids and dogs alike find healing and purpose. Many of the program's graduates visited Buddy's Park, sharing their own stories of courage and loyalty inspired by his legacy. On the 5th anniversary of Buddy's passing, a special ceremony was held at the park. Families, neighbors, and even officers from Tommy's department gathered to celebrate the enduring spirit of the heroic sheepdog. Children played with their dogs near the bronze statue, their laughter echoing through the air, a reminder of the joy Buddy had brought to so many lives. Standing before the crowd, Tommy spoke with the same passion and sincerity that had defined him since he was a boy. Buddy wasn't just my dog, he was my teacher, my protector, and my inspiration. He showed me that love isn't just an emotion, it's an action. It's standing by someone when they need you most, even when it's hard. He looked at the statue, the bronze capturing Buddy's proud stance and gentle eyes. This park isn't just about remembering Buddy, Tommy continued. It's about carrying forward what he stood for: bravery, loyalty, and compassion. It's about making sure that every child and every dog has the chance to find the kind of friendship that changes lives. As he stepped back, a soft breeze rustled the trees, and for a fleeting moment, Tommy felt a sense of peace. It was as if Buddy was there, watching over him, proud of the life he'd built and the lives he'd touched. In Maplewood, the bond between a boy and his dog became more than a memory. It became a legacy, a reminder that heroes don't always wear badges or capes. Sometimes they come with shaggy fur, a wagging tail, and a heart full of unconditional love. And so the story of Buddy and Tommy lived on, inspiring countless others to embrace the power of loyalty, the courage to never give up, and the belief that the smallest acts of love can make the biggest difference.